through the website and other things. And we have a whole bunch on our website and our YouTube channel that I'll direct you to shortly. In the chat, I did put our join link, which you can sign up to join our email list. And we did just implement texting. So if you are feeling email burnout, which I think many of us are, but you want to, quick reminders about the financial aid process, or timely information about the FAFSA and scholarships, anything like that, please join us there, faymain.com/join. And I'm going to share my screen now so I can get the presentation started. And I also want to draw your attention to our social media. You can find us on all the platforms at Fame Main. Jeremy, can you just give me a thumbs up that you can see the presentation? Awesome, thank you. I feel like we've done Zoom for like a year now, and I still want to make sure everything's working the way it's supposed to. So again, as you're listening, feel free to sign up for the mailing list at faymain.com/join. Connect with us on social media. So the handle is Fame Main, pretty easy. And throw your questions in the chat. I'm going to pause in a couple places just to see if there's any questions to make sure you're all still with me. There are a couple of spots where I'm going to ask, let's call them trivia questions, some knowledge check questions. So I'll have you put the answers to that in the chat when they come up. So do be thinking and listening for those. That unfortunately, no prizes. If we were in person, I might throw some candy at you, but at the moment, we'll just, you can take pride that you got the right answer. Okay, so let's get started. I know everyone's time is pretty valuable. We're going to cover a lot tonight. You have access to our pay publication, which is our sort of Paying for College Bible. So everything I'm going to talk about and more exists in our Paying for College publication. You can download a free copy or view the PDF or order a copy to be mailed to your house at faymain.com/publication. So you're going to see some page references throughout the presentation in some places. That's just referring you back to this guide. So if you forget something, or you want to make sure if you're a paper kind of person, I feel like we've done so much digital now that I still have like notebooks that I write notes in because I feel called to do something that's not on a screen. Then you can order a copy of that. Okay, so we'll do an overview. We'll talk about types and steps and timing. And you can just follow along, take some notes. We'll have time for questions. And just take heart that you don't have to remember everything from this presentation. You're going to have contact with your school counselors, with FAME. I'm hoping to be back in person and on the road in the fall. And so as a senior, maybe we'll do the scholarship presentation in person, Jeremy, so we can do all that. So let's get started. Financial aid is kind of an umbrella term for money to help you pay for college. And there's sort of two buckets of that. There's merit-based and need-based. And the need-based is money that you get because you need it, which seems pretty self-explanatory, but there is sort of a calculation behind the scenes. The majority of what we're going to talk about tonight falls in that category. The merit-based aid is money that you get for doing or being special, right? So generally academic-based, although as we were just discussing, a lot of colleges are kind of doing away with test scores as a metric for both admissions and for merit money. So it's going to be interesting to see, school by school, of course, how that works and what they're using to determine those merit dollars. Certainly, I think they would still be looking at things like GPA, but what we've been hearing is a lot of schools are really looking at the holistic student. What kind of activities are they doing? How engaged are they in the community? Those kinds of things. There is merit, of course, for things like music and art at those particular schools, athletics at Division I schools, those kinds of things. But the merit kind of functions separate of the financial aid process. So our focus tonight is going to be on that need-based, the financial aid, sort of kickstarting that process. Okay, I'm certainly happy to answer questions on merit and those kinds of things. But for tonight's purposes, the focus is going to be on the financial aid stuff. All schools use something called the FAFSA to determine financial aid eligibility. Okay, it's the free application for federal student aid, and I'm going to dive deeper into that in a little bit. But pretty much every college, all 3,000 something of them that are accredited, that participate in the federal and state financial aid programs, use the FAFSA. and I want everyone to do it. So even in the pandemic year, I don't know how we're going to refer to this in past tense. It still feels like we're living in it. Families would say, well, we make too much money, we're not going to get anything, or my neighbor down the road, they did the FAFSA and they didn't get a lot of financial aid. And certainly that is a reality for most families, for many families. However, everyone should do one anyway, because you just don't know. There's a whole behind the scenes calculation that looks at a variety of factors that you might be surprised about. And actually, beyond in the 23-24 academic year, the whole calculation is changing. So everyone's going to do a FAFSA then, because they're going to change the formula completely. Minimum, you should do a FAFSA, because lots of scholarships, though all that free money that you want, many of them want proof that the FAFSA was completed as part of the application materials. So even if you do the FAFSA and you're like, wow, we just got offered loans, it's still really important to do it so that you can maximize those scholarships by having that available to submit as application criteria. And again, it may seem like circumstances are identical to your neighbor, and then the FAFSAs could come back with different calculations, and that's common because they're very formulaic based on a lot of different factors. So I want everyone to do it. I'm going to tell you when in a little bit. But you should really complete the FAFSA every year that the student is interested in receiving financial aid. If there are any students, I don't see faces, so bear with me. I would love, if you are a student and you're listening to this presentation right now, go ahead and give me a hi in the chat so that I can address you directly. But largely we're used to getting parents. But if there are students here, shout out to you for doing the prep work early, and let me know if you're here so I can give you a shout. There are some things you can be doing. Oh, I've got some. Yay, that's exciting. I like it when the students are part of the process. And I will say to you, students that are listening, this is your process. So you're here with your folks, and there's certainly a little bit of back and forth with student and parent, but you are in the driver's seat in this process. It is your education. It is your FAFSA. There is one FAFSA application. We've had a lot of confusion this year for some reason about each person doing one thing. It is the student's process. Oh boy, there's a lot of you. I'm happy. That's excellent. And so you are in the driver's seat. So consider me talking to the family as a whole, but really students, I'm so glad you're here to pay attention, because this is a chance for you to take ownership of this process. Excellent. It's junior year. It's almost the end, if you can believe that. There are things you can be doing now to get ready to be on top of things in this beginning of your senior year, because a lot of stuff's going to happen really fast. So if you can do some things ahead of time and do some of this prep work, you're going to feel a lot more prepared. One of those things is building the list. So there's some get ready steps you can do now. And if I'm hopeful that some of you have started to think about this. And when you're doing your college research, consider costs and financial aid. And I know the parents that are listening are like, yep, the first place I go is that tuition and fee section of the website, okay? But I want to put some disclaimers on some of that for you. I want you to focus on net price. So what you really need to know is, what is our bottom line? What are we looking at sort of out of pocket to finance this education? When you go to a school's website and you click on that tuition and fees line, you're getting a sticker price, okay? So almost nobody actually pays that full price, because you're gonna get things off the top like merit, you're gonna get financial aid, you're gonna apply for scholarships. You wanna know kind of what's that bottom line out of pocket cost going to look like. Okay, so every college that's accredited that participates in federal financial aid has something called a net price calculator. And this is a website, you plug in some information, some demographics, some academic information, and some family financial information, and it's going to kind of spit out what 1 year at that college might look like out of pocket. So it's going to estimate financial aid you may receive, merit you may receive. So you're going to have a starting point of, is this way out of our reach, or is this kind of somewhere in our comfort zone, right? And then you can sort of set a line, as much as we want to send our kids to their dream school, in many cases, that's not necessarily a reality, and you really need to do some math. Okay, so focus on that net price, and doing the research is really key. You know, if you're going to buy a car, like when you're ready to sort of pick out your first like new nice car, you don't just walk to a car lot and point and say, I want that one, right? You're doing a lot of research. You're figuring out if it's a good fit and if you can afford it. Approach your college search in the same way, okay? Schools will vary in the amount of financial aid they can offer and how much of the need they can meet. So in the beginning, you heard me say one of the types of financial aid is need-based, and it comes from this calculation, right? How much does it cost? How much can the family sort of contribute? What's left is need. There is a way that you can look at this. Let me show you. Big Future, which is through the College Board, has this great tool. And College Board sounds familiar because SATs, PSATs, that all functions through the College Board. So in most cases, if they don't already, your student will have an account here. Big Future is the college search tool built into College Board. And you can dive into the search process and build a list right within this website, okay? One of the great things is like if you're focusing on majors or you want to know like where it is, if sports and activities available is important, you can search on all that. But there is a category for paying, okay? So you can go, I'm going to show you in real time in a second, but you'll see there's a little slider, like how much of the need can they meet, right? So schools average anywhere between, you know, 30-ish%. And then there are your schools that meet 100%, right? So in Maine, as an example, like Bowdoin is one of those schools that meets 100% of need. Of course, the challenge is getting in, right? If you want to be in a sweet spot, if you want a list of schools that's going to be 60% of need in North, you can go right to Big Future, pull the slider out, and then it's going to whittle down your list, okay? And then on other search criteria as well. Let me just make sure. Are you seeing the Big Future site now, Jeremy? Okay, great. This is where you can build the list. You'll see here, I'm not signed in, although I did create a student account so I can mess around in here, but then I did some damage and now they locked me out. But you can, as you save colleges, you'll have a list that you can side-by-side compare. So if I want to look at, let's look at Colby College for example purposes, right? So you can just go and search individually by college, okay? And you'll see all kinds of information here about the particular school. It'll tell you the average financial aid package. You can link right to the net price calculator here. And this little paying piece will tell you all the things you need to know about financial aid. So you can search it that way, okay? Or you can kind of run it wide open using your search parameters. So if I just click search, if I have not built my list yet, I'm like, I don't know, I think I want to be in New England and I need them to meet a certain percentage. You can say, okay, so I want to pick a region. Let's go New England. Okay, so that's going to whittle down my list to 205. Okay, I would say the majority of colleges participate. Net price calculator is required. Big Future is an opt-in. So do keep that in mind as you're doing the research. It's a fantastic tool, but do bear in mind that there may be, some of your small, more obscure colleges might not participate in Big Future. Then you can click on this paying and say, okay, I need to whittle down further and take this list. And I need schools that are going to meet at least 60% of need. Now I'm down to 175, right? So this can be a great way to build your list and start, building a realistic, and then you can say, okay, we can scale it back. Let's look at some that might be a stretch. Let's look at some that might feel a little more safe financially, and then whittle that down based on major and all those other things that are important. Okay, so that kind of searching and building the list and working with the net price calculators is really going to give you a baseline for a nice, well-rounded college list that isn't going to feel scary. And you might be surprised, some of the schools, like Colby's a great example, where if you go to the website, I think it says like $76,000 or some really scary looking number, but they meet 100% of need. So that can be an affordable option for some families. I worked with one a few years ago where Colby turned out to be less expensive out of pocket than Orono just because of that family's particular circumstances. Of course, that's not the case everywhere, but doing the numbers and working with these net price calculators and something like Big Future is really going to help you figure out sort of that group of colleges that might work best for you. So get started there if you haven't. And as you're doing the research, oh, did you want to, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to also let folks know, I recently filmed a screencast on our own platform called Naviance, which allows you to do a lot of the similar things that Big Future does. Some folks like Big Future better. The interface may be different, but Naviance is something that you guys can deep dive in and do all the same things that Maria just outlined, but using your own personal information, because we've already uploaded your transcript, we've already uploaded your SAT scores, PSAT, all that kind of stuff. And we're building right now a database based on the senior classes that are graduating. So that information is factored in there. So how we do as an institution in certain schools. So that information is built in and baked into the Naviance searches. But just like Big Future, you can put in sorts, different filters that help you sort out, especially on Supermatch, which is their equivalent to that what Maria just showed you, tuition costs, all that kind of stuff. So not only do you have Naviance, you have Big Future, there are so many resources out there. And what your students will gather in the red folder meeting and what we talked to them a little bit about in the junior meeting is it's never too early, especially in junior year, to start building your list and start getting parameters around your search criteria. Where, how big, how much, and then being able to have that list be fluid over the next couple, 4 or 5 months, rolling up to application time. So I'll get that screencast. I know I've been threatening with that screencast, and Hillary is on the call, and she offered to help me. I will get it out to you folks. I'm sorry, we've just been a little swamped. I will get it out this weekend so that if you aren't familiar on how to access Naviance, which is super easy, and all the functionality of it, you can watch that screencast over the weekend or on next week and feel pretty good about that as you go into red folders.
Great, thank you. And I'm always a fan of make use of tools you're already familiar with, make use of things you already have access to, don't reinvent the wheel. That's a great tool and you can use them together, right? And sort of build your master list and feel good about it. When you're doing that research, make sure you pay attention to deadlines. Particularly financial aid deadlines. You're going to run up against admissions deadlines and those kinds of things. Every college has a priority filing deadline for the FAFSA, and if it is a CSS profile school, which I'll talk about in a minute, the profile. It is crucial that you understand what those deadlines are because it can mean the difference in thousands of dollars, and I'm going to show you a slide a little later that will explain that. All schools require the FAFSA, as I mentioned. There are some schools that require what's called a CSS profile, which is a much deeper dive into family finances. So the FAFSA is pretty formulaic. It's actually fairly simple. There's a lot of things you can exclude. They've done a fantastic job streamlining it over the last few years. The profile is a much deeper dive into family finances. It's also not free to file. And it generally follows schools with large endowments with big money to give out. So like in Maine, the only colleges that require the profile in addition to the FAFSA are Bates, Bowdoin, and Colby. Okay, so that's going to give you a sense of the type of school. Big Future will tell you if the profile is required. The school's website will tell you if the profile is required. So if you're looking at staying in Maine and you're not applying to Bates, Bowdoin, or Colby, congratulations, you don't have to do the profile. Anything else, if you're exploring any out-of-state school, double, triple check that you don't need to do the profile as well. Okay, and there are resources to help you through that. I've done a few now. Certainly more of a FAFSA expert, but I think your school counseling staff, and certainly you're welcome to reach out if you have questions about the profile. It is a standard form, except there are some school specific nuances to them depending on which colleges you're applying to. But we can certainly do a deep dive on that if folks have questions one-on-one. The other thing to be doing is saving as much as possible. Every dollar that you have saved for education is one less dollar that you have to borrow and repay with interest. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Every dollar that you have saved is one less dollar that you have to borrow and repay with interest. Things like textbooks even are what we call a planned out-of-pocket expense, right? So they're not necessarily charged to your bill. Your financial aid, it's factored in, but it's not necessarily covered by your financial aid, right? All those incidental things, supplies and snacks for your room and all the different things that come along, forget just tuition and fees, having some kind of financial savings set aside is going to be crucial. And then if you can really ramp up the savings for putting towards tuition and those kinds of things, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable. And it's also not too early to start applying, or at least to start researching your scholarships. Okay, so some of them it might be a little too early, but you can start doing the work, building that list as well now. I do recommend using free searches only. So more and more we're seeing kind of, I want to call it like the orbits of scholarships, right? Well, they'll curate a list for you for a fee. Don't do that. We can help you for free. We have a ton of scholarship resources. Your school counseling office has a ton of resources. You're going to get a whole presentation about it. You're going to get to listen to me blab again about scholarships when you become seniors. But we have a whole bunch of links at our website. So famian.com, we have a Maine-based scholarship database, as well as links to external scholarship searches. Now's a great time to be thinking about what your niche is. What can you write about really effectively? What are your hobbies and talents and things that you can leverage to try to get money for college? And there are scholarships for literally everything. I mean, there's one that's like an essay about being left-handed in a right-handed world. When I say anything, I mean anything, okay? You just kind of have to dig for them a little bit. Now's a great time to start kind of building the scholarship spreadsheet. So take a look at that, never too early. And when you're building your list, go to the school scholarship website, see what they have for resources, follow those breadcrumbs, okay? And now for your homework assignment, okay? This is one of the most crucial get ready steps. Part of the FAFSA process requires signatures, but not paper signatures, it requires digital signatures. Every student is required to set up an account at Federal Student Aid, and you're setting up a username and password that will become your digital signature. Okay, so every student needs one of these. Back when I did my first FAFSA, it was on paper, and then you had like a 4-digit PIN number, and then they said, let's make it more complicated. So now they've, in an effort to streamline all the college websites, have kind of made this gateway, right? And your key to the gateway is your FSA ID, okay? So every student needs one. It is not too early to do this. If you have, I'm about to make one for my 7th grader, honestly, just to get it done. It'll probably change by the time he's in school. This is one of those things you probably want to do ahead of time. Folks do create these at the sort of sit down and file the FAFSA time, but it can add time to the process, and sometimes you unearth a problem you didn't know you had. It's attached to your social security number. So every student needs one, and at least one parent. Okay, so if parent information is required on the student's FAFSA, which in most cases, if you're juniors in high school, a parent information is required, at least one parent needs the FSA ID. If you are a parent that has helped an older child with a FAFSA already in the last, gosh, I think we're at year 5 now. In the last 5 years, you probably already have one of these. So it is uniquely attached to you by your social security number. So you don't create 2. If you're a student yourself, and I'm talking to the parents now, or you've created one already because you have an older child that you've done a FAFSA for, it is yours forever, okay? So you may need to reset the password and kind of unlock it, and we have resources to help you do that. If this is your first run through, student and parent, then each one of you needs to create the process. Okay, so you go in, you pick a username, you pick a password, you answer some challenge questions, you add your email and mobile phone. Okay, I recommend doing this sooner rather than later. Write it down, keep it someplace safe. Okay. If you have twins, so if you are a twin, or as a parent you have twins or triplets, I didn't know you were a twin. Wow, okay. So each sibling will need, each twin needs their own, right? They each have their own social security number. Each twin needs their own, but the parent will use the same ID on each student's FAFSA. Okay. Is anybody totally lost? Feel free to unmute yourself if you have questions about this. I think everyone's good. We do have a place for you to write this down. A couple of tips. I want you not to use a school email address if you can help it. When you graduate, your school email address will graduate with you. At some point, it will be deactivated, okay? So now's a really great time to set up like a Gmail or Hotmail. I don't know if the kids are using Hotmail anymore, but an email address that's some version of your name that's professional that you'll have access to forever. Parents, I wouldn't use a work email unless you know you're going to have access to it. When you're setting this up, you're going to get texted a code and you're going to get emailed a code, and those codes are only good for 30 minutes. So you want to make sure you have access to it at the time you set it up. On our website, in the quick links section, there is a form you can print and download to write this all down. Now you're going to say, Maria, it's fine. I'm going to remember. I use the same password for everything. I need you to write it down. You need to use this for all 4 years that you're applying for financial aid and beyond. I had to create one of these so I can keep track of my federal student loans, even though I've been out of school for a long time. You will need to refer back to this constantly. I don't remember what I ate for lunch yesterday. Never mind something I set up 3 years ago, right? Write it down, keep it someplace safe, keep it in your red folders, keep all that college stuff together. Okay, so this is the thing, this is your homework assignment. Sometime between now and September, sit down and get the FSA IDs done, write them down, and then you're like probably 35% of the way through the financial aid process, right? This is the reason we have you do it early also is I worked with a family where they didn't realize the older sibling had set something up for the parent, and it was a big process to untangle it. It took a couple extra weeks that we didn't think it was going to. I've had other circumstances where we were looking at the parent's Social Security card, we typed in the number. It turns out that the Social Security Administration had a different number on file and had sent him the wrong card, which was the thing that had never come up really in his life until this particular moment. It decided to rear its ugly head. Just in case it's going to unearth problems you didn't know you had, I would recommend getting this sooner rather than later. We have a video on our YouTube channel that's all about creating the FSA ID. And we actually also have one that's called What the Heck is Wrong with My FSA ID? So if you have set one up, that's actually what we called it. If you've got one because of an older child and you're like, I don't know, I can't get in, what's happening? Watch the What the Heck is Wrong video. We walk you through some troubleshooting steps. And of course, you can always reach out to me directly. We've become accidental experts at untangling FSA IDs. Okay, but this is a crucial part of the process to get done ahead of time. And then once you've got all that stuff done, the next step is the FAFSA. I'm going to tell you when. You can't do it now. But for the 2022-23 cycle, which seems crazy to say out loud, you're going to do the free application for federal student aid at FAFSA.gov, which will route you back to federal student aid site. It's all going to look the same. It's free, so make sure you're at the .gov website. The first F in FAFSA stands for free. If you start filling in information and then somebody asks you for a credit card, you are in the wrong place. Okay, they've done a pretty good job cracking down, but every year the scammers creep up. It does need to be completed each year. It gets easier because you're doing a renewal at that point. Let me tell you when. So October 1st of senior year. October is FAFSA season. So think about fall as FAFSA season if that helps. So you can do all the get ready stuff we talked about, building the list, scholarships, getting that FSA ID done. Then October 1 kicks off the season. Okay, so for you all, as early as possible in October. Okay. I don't recommend day 1 or day 2 because there's usually some glitches, some kinks and things that come up. Realistically, by Halloween, maybe that first week of November, it depends, if you're doing early action, obviously sooner is better. If you submit that FAFSA prior to like October 31st, you're going to be in great shape. Maybe no Halloween parties until your FAFSA is done. Just a thought. October is FAFSA season, and this is every October. So the new cycle, remember we talked about, it does need to be filed every year. Think of every fall as financial aid season. Okay, so every October you're doing the next FAFSA. For the 22-23 FAFSA, it is going to look at 2020 tax information. So built into the FAFSA is this great feature that I think is also at least 4 years old, 4 or 5, called the IRS Data Retrieval Tool, where you can link directly to the IRS and have it import your information into the FAFSA, which is amazing because it takes human error right out of the equation. You know the information is coming directly from the source. And I would say 98% of families can utilize this tool. Okay, so if you're a tax filer, And the reason they go kind of 2 years back is because it's a closed tax year, that information already exists at the IRS, they can bring it forward. I'm going to talk a little later about like what happens if stuff is different, right? The last few cycles, right now, it's a ton of appeals and things because it looked at 2019 and then a pandemic happened. There's ways to deal with it, but by default, when you sit down in October to complete that FAFSA, it's going to require 2020 tax information. And you're going to link directly to the IRS. When I was a financial aid counselor, we would have people, you know, you put it in the wrong place, or they transposed 2 numbers, or they left something blank. This takes all of that out so you know you're getting the accurate financial aid information. Okay. The FAFSA is a student application. So for all my students listening, this is your form. You're in the driver's seat. The first section of the FAFSA is all about the student. You're doing one form where there's student information, and then your parent, you put some parent information on there, and then you both sign it, but it's one form and it belongs to the student. Okay, so we like to take a family's approach. We know that you're doing it together, but you might not be. In junior and senior year of college, you probably not living at home. Maybe you'll come home in the fall or do it around Thanksgiving time, but it is your process. You're gonna need to take ownership of that. So we just like to put that reminder out there for folks. As far as the parent information, okay, so this is a little bit tricky in that it's not always clear who is considered a parent. So for financial aid purposes, your biological or adoptive parents, I'm talking to the students here, the students' biological or adoptive parents, whether or not they are married to each other or currently married, if they live in the same household as the student, those are the parents on the FAFSA, okay? If it's a separated situation, parents are divorced, 2 separate households, it is the parent with whom the student lived with most in the last 12 months that goes on the FAFSA, generally, because that parent is considered to be providing more than half of the financial support by virtue of the roof over the head, okay? If you have a particular circumstance that you are not sure who is your parent, or how to find that person, you can private message me in the chat, or you can email me after. I'm going to make sure to throw my email address in there at the end. We have a video on our YouTube channel again that is Who is My Parent on the FAFSA. I tried to get it called Are You My Mommy, like the Dr. Seuss book, and they wouldn't let me call it that for copyright reasons, but it's essentially that. It's Who is My Parent on the FAFSA, okay? So there is resources to help you figure that out. We have a flow chart on our website that can help you determine that. But basically, it's the parent that provided more of the financial support, and generally that's who did the student live with most. I will say grandparents, relatives, anyone the student's living with that's not their parent is never going to be a parent on the FAFSA. So if you're in one of those circumstances, or someone you know is, please send them my direction and I'll navigate them through how to do that, okay? Along with the income information on the FAFSA, they also might ask you about assets, but they might not. So something built into the FAFSA, it's going to look at the income first. You're going to put in the income information from the tax return, and it might say, we have enough information, we don't need to know more. Skip you all the way to the end. It might ask you, does the value of your assets equal or exceed a certain dollar figure? When you're considering the answer to that question, you don't count the value of the home that you live in, so your primary residence doesn't count. Your retirement accounts are not an asset on the FAFSA. Businesses or farms that you own that have fewer than 100 full-time employees are not an asset on the FAFSA. Your personal property like cars and boats and whatever, none of that is an asset on the FAFSA. Okay, so it's just looking for cash, checking, savings, college accounts. So 529s, college savings accounts are reported as a parent asset, but I promise you the impact is minimal. One of my favorite things to do is myth busting, and somehow, somewhere, somebody got it in their head that if you have money saved for college, you lose financial aid. That is the majority of the time not true. Sometimes it will reduce eligibility for need-based loans, which is okay because you're getting free money versus money you have to pay back. We've done a number of calculations on a family of 4 and certain income levels with, you know, up to $50,000 in savings, and the impact on that family contribution number was minimal, right? But they are reported on the FAFSA: stocks, bonds, mutual funds, non-retirement investments. okay? There is a list in the pay booklet I talked about in the beginning, and then another chart that I'll make sure that I link for you. But the primary mistake people make in the assets section is the value of their home. So your primary residence is not an asset on the FAFSA. If you have a second property, a camp or a ski house, or another piece of land, something in trust, that is an asset on the FAFSA, but your primary residence is not. That was a lot. I'm gonna take a pause and just give people a chance to ask questions in the chat or unmute yourself if you have questions. And again, if you don't want to put it out there in the chat, you can switch it to just me and ask me directly, and I can anonymously share the answer with the group. But let's just take a minute and give folks a chance to ask questions. Or if you don't, I'm going to assume everyone's got it all figured out. Okay, they're all eating dinner. That's my theory. Okay, so here's your first question. Okay, so get ready to put it in the chat. If a student is considered dependent on the FAFSA, meaning if they need to have parent information, who needs to get an FSA ID? I'm going to give you a minute to answer in the chat. George, very good. Parent and student. Yep. Very good. You're all listening. Excellent. Excellent. Yes, the parent and the student. Okay. And then it's yours forever. It's completely attached to you by your social security number until, of course, they decide to change the process again, which will probably happen at some point. Okay, I'm just making sure there's no questions. There is a question I will answer directly in a moment because it's fairly specific. But thank you all for paying attention. Okay, there's another one coming up a little later. So great job on the knowledge check. Here's my slide. I'm going to get on my little imaginary soapbox for a second about deadlines. You heard me mention in the beginning that deadlines are crucial. I used to be the button pusher. So I worked in 2 financial aid offices, one at a public college, one at a private. The priority FAFSA deadline is really specific to types of money that run out. Okay, so in this example, the first student submitted their FAFSA before November 1st, right? Because it opens October 1, so before November 1, and they have a 0 EFC. And that expected family contribution just means it's a measure of the family's household strength. So they take a look at the income and assets and they say, it's sort of like a credit score, but related to paying for college. Okay, it's not a numerical figure a currency figure necessarily. It's a benchmark. Okay, so 0 EFC, neediest type of student, maximum financial aid. Okay, so this student was early, November 1, and they got the full Pell Grant, a state of Maine grant, SEOG, university, all those things that say grant are free money and don't need to be repaid. Okay. Work study is money that you earn working on campus, and then the direct loan that everyone gets. The second student was 1 day after the school's priority deadline and lost the SEOG and the university grant because those are pools of money that are first come, first serve. So they're going to give everyone that met the deadline that money, and once it's gone, it's gone. Okay. Things like Pell Grants don't run out. The Maine State Grant, if you're a Maine resident and you are attending a Maine institution, you have to file your FAFSA by May 1st to hit the Maine State Grant deadline. Okay. So they were 1 day after the deadline, but still before May 1st. The final student submitted in the summer and lost everything except Pell and direct loan because those don't run out. Oh, someone said, what is the school's priority deadline? Every school has a different deadline. So they fall anywhere from mid-December to May 1 in that bucket, okay? So as you're researching your schools, find out what your deadline is. My rule of thumb is figure out all your deadlines, whichever one is the earliest one, do your FAFSA at that point, okay? If you still are building the list, file it sometime in October. You can always go back and add schools on, and they're going to look at that October date as meeting the deadline. So even if you add them after, Okay, every school is a different deadline. Make sure you know what it is. If you file your FAFSA in October, you're going to be guaranteed to meet any and all deadlines. Okay, so just think of that as your target. But this we just point out to say that, like, even if you're not 100% sure, or you want to just do the FAFSA with 1 or 2 schools on it just to get it done, highly recommend doing that. That way you're meeting all the possible deadlines. Okay, get back off my soapbox. And that's a real stat. As a former button pusher in the financial aid office, I can attest to the fact that that is a real thing, particularly at, state schools. They have those university grants. They're sometimes flowery names, or they add different funding. Once it's gone, it's gone. And it's usually overspent because they offer money to more students than are going to take admission to start with. So they're kind of gambling in the beginning anyway. So early. Once you file the FAFSA, you get a bunch of flurry of emails, one of which to the student, because remember, this is the student's form and the student's process, will say, congratulations, your FAFSA has been processed. Review your student aid report. The student aid report is a line-by-line summary of the FAFSA information, and it also includes codes of information. So it's going to tell you if you made a mistake, if you have to go back and correct anything. It will remind you which colleges you added to the FAFSA. It's also the thing that you would likely need to submit as proof of the FAFSA completion for scholarships. So I recommend downloading and keeping a copy of that someplace. It is also the earliest indication you will know if you were selected for a process called verification, which is not anything that you did wrong. Something like 30% of FAFSAs are randomly selected. I say random because there are some things that trigger it. So if you can't use the IRS linking feature, or information is very different one year over another, sometimes that will trigger it. But using that IRS linking feature will dramatically cut down on selection. And what we're hearing is that that is finally true. I think we're getting a lot fewer students are being selected for verification. The reason you want to know early is that you want to make sure that if you are selected for verification, that you follow up with every college that you put on your FAFSA, because each college has their own process for doing it, okay? It's kind of timely. It's submitting paperwork to each college. So back on that student aid report, there'll be a little asterisk next to your EFC number and a comment that says you were selected for a process called verification. Follow up with your college. I want you to do that as soon as possible. You won't be able to receive a finalized offer of financial aid until that process is complete. So be on the lookout for that. Just saw a question. Oh, I meant poll question. Question popped up May 1st of 2022 for grants. It is before May 1st of the upcoming year. So imagine if you're filing in October of 2021, right? You're definitely meeting the May 1 deadline of 2022. So yes, you're thinking of it correctly. Okay, so in October, if they're filing sometime in October, through December, I want them to do it early. They're meeting that May 1 deadline. Okay. Here's another poll question for those of you that were taking notes. When does the new FAFSA become available each year? I've probably said it 100 times already, so hopefully everyone will get it right. But when does the new FAFSA become available each year? Bingo, October 1st. Excellent. Okay. 10-1. Very good. Yes, you're all paying attention. Excellent. And once you become a returning student, I usually tell families Thanksgiving, right? You might be home for Thanksgiving. You've got a few days off. If you're a returning student, you're already home. That's a great time to do it, to sit down with your folks so that you all have your FSA IDs in one place and you can complete the financial aid application in one sitting. But I do think every October, it's a good habit to get into. I'm going to take us to the end here, switching to talking about the types of aid that you're applying for. Right? So scholarships and grants are the free money. That's the stuff you want to maximize. That is money that doesn't have to be repaid. So that's federal, things like Pell Grants. You saw on the example slide something called SEOG, which is Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, a long way of saying another type of grant for Pell eligible students based on need. There's the Maine State Grant, which again has that May 1 deadline. There's the institutional scholarships and grants, and this is separate from the merit that we talked about in the beginning. So this is another pool of funds from the college specifically. So like when I worked at the University of New England, it was called Nor'easter Grant, right? It's their need-based pool of money. They always have some kind of university-specific name. And then there's all the private scholarships that you're going to search for on your own, okay? Then there's something called work study. The challenge with work study is that if you are offered it, and there's a question on the FAFSA that asks if you're interested, I want all of you to click yes, even if you're not sure, okay? It is not money that comes off the bill. So it may show up in your financial aid letter, kind of sandwiched in amongst the other types of aid, but it does not get subtracted from your bill. It's money that you earn by working a job on campus, okay? So it's a great opportunity to earn some money, and for, your employer will understand that you're a student first and an employer second. So you can say, I can't come to work study job today because I have to study for a test. If you tried that at Hannaford, they would say, good luck, don't come back. Work study is a great opportunity to build skills, to meet people. Sometimes it leads to a big girl job. That's what happened to me. But sometimes it's just, babysitting the computer lab and studying, getting paid to do it, right? Pretty cool opportunity. So there's federal work study. It is need-based. You do have to answer the question on the FAFSA. First come, first serve. You can choose not to use it, but I always have people click yes on the FAFSA just so that it's there. And to the point about scholarships or, using college savings, sometimes they'll reduce work study if you're not going to use it. They're never going to put you in a situation where you owe a bill, right? So just keep that in mind. There are flexibilities there. I want you to maximize every free dollar you can, including scholarships and savings, okay? Every free dollar. Then, of course, there are the student loans, and everyone at the if we were in person, this is when everyone goes, oh, right? It's like the hot money issue, especially politically right now. So here's my spiel about that. The federal direct student loans are not bad debt to have as long as you pay them back. The reality for most families is that you do have to borrow something to help meet the costs. Okay, there's limits on these. So for the first year, students can only get a total of $5,500, second year 65, last 2 years 7,500. So the students you hear about that are drowning in debt didn't maximize their free money, didn't look for scholarships, and it's largely private loans that become the real bear. There are a couple great things about the federal student loans in that the repayment options are extremely flexible. There's lots of income-based options. There's forgiveness options built in. They are a good way for students to build credit after graduation without credit cards, which we all know can be a slippery slope. It's, again, I have graduate school debt to federal student loans, and I was just able to buy a house. It's not bad debt to have as long as you're paying it back, right? It's when you get into default and delinquency that things get problematic. Okay, so I have many families that we don't want them to borrow a thing. Okay, great. But some of it is taking ownership, right? If you're borrowing through this education, you better do well and finish that degree and get a job that allows you to pay it back, right? Some families really want to put that on the student to say, this is your way to take ownership of your process. Right? Obviously, you want to minimize borrowing whenever possible and not get into trouble with it. Private loans are a whole other thing, and I'm certainly happy to help families navigate that. We do a lot of sessions on financial aid offers and paying the bill in the springtime, so spring of senior year, and we have a bunch of videos on that on our YouTube channel as well. There is money out there. Somebody just put a comment attesting that this process works. 69 different scholarships. Amazing, amazing. I'm going to copy and paste that for future use. We had a student, one of the colleges I worked at, that if she wasn't working and she wasn't in class, she was looking for scholarships and ended up with $25,000 in private scholarships her first year. It takes work. There's money out there, and lots of money in this state goes unclaimed because people don't put the work in to find it. We have organizations that call us to ask us for students that need scholarships. Okay, so you got to put the work in. Okay, and that will minimize your student loan debt. But again, if you're going to see an offer of federal direct loans on your financial aid offer, if you need to borrow, we do recommend starting there. Okay. And don't read the comments on Facebook. And if you see something or your neighbor Sally tells you something about student loans and you want to make sure it's true, you ask me. Okay, there's a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of politicized stuff, conversations about student loans. I want to make sure you have accurate information. Okay, so feel free to always go to our website, go to the student aid website, or ask me directly. I'm happy to answer questions about that. Okay, we're in a world where information is ubiquitous and it's not always correct. Okay, so I just want to put that out there as well. Here's how the process works. The financial aid office will notify you of your financial aid offer after you're accepted for admission. Okay, so you're gonna do a lot of this in October. You might simultaneously be working on your admissions applications, and then you're gonna wait, right? There's this waiting period where you're like, did I get in? What am I gonna do? Once you get the big envelope, congratulations, you're in. Then the financial aid stuff starts. Okay, so this is, a lot of schools did start pushing out things in January, sometime between January, February, March, right? Is when you're gonna get that financial aid notification after getting in. You might get a paper letter, although a lot of them, especially as a circumstance with the pandemic, were doing email notifications only or texting. Some people got text messages and I'm like, that's wild. There's something about a piece of paper in the mail, I don't know. This is a great opportunity, and I'm talking to you again, students. If you are somebody who is not good at checking your email, I need you to start building that habit now, because the financial aid office will communicate to you via your .edu email address. So once you kickstart the process at the college, you're going to get assigned a school email address. You need to be good at checking it, and if you're juggling multiple colleges because you haven't decided yet, set up those email addresses to forward to your personal so you don't miss anything. Okay. Because if you do get selected for verification or the financial aid office needs more information, they're going to reach out via email. That's also where you're going to notice your financial aid notification is going to get emailed to you. Okay, so just be good at checking email if you're not already. I think even at schools that are doing paper letters the first time, you only get one. Everything else comes after in email, digital, school portal, okay? And get used to logging into a school. If you're used to Naviance, a similar kind of thing exists at a college. So every college has like a student portal. That's where the financial aid lives. That's where your bill lives. Get used to looking at that. Once you get financial aid offers, and we're hoping that you're going to have many because you're going to have built this list and you're going to kind of compare them, they're all going to be a little different. They're like apples and apricots, round fruit, but they look really different, right? There's no standardization of aid offers anywhere, even amongst the like humane schools that all operate in the same portal, all look a little different with their aid offers. This is not a main problem. This is nationally, almost every college has a different financial aid letter. You're not going to know just by looking at it what the bottom line is or if it's the best deal. Okay, you got to do some math. I've seen really creative spreadsheets. I've seen people who are like really savvy and they've got a binder and they pull all things out. We've created a worksheet for you as well in our tools section, and ours is fillable PDF that does the math for you, which I like. I work at the Finance Authority, but I have an English degree and a master's in education. I don't do math. So if it's going to do math for me, I'm going to use it. You'll see there, it's probably a little small, but you can line up your schools. Okay, you put in the costs. So what are my billable things? Tuition and fees, room and board. Then you subtract out the free money, subtracted all your grants, and you're going to have a bottom line cost before any loans. You're going to be able to see it in real numbers. Okay. I don't necessarily care how you do this math. I just want you to do it so that you have a real picture in front of you. You'll see at the bottom, we separated out work study, and we did that intentionally as a reminder that it doesn't come off the bottom line bill, okay? We do sessions on these in the springtime, so we have a comparing aid offer session. This year, we did a couple of virtual workshops where we put people in Zoom breakout rooms and one-on-one worked through their financial aid offers with them. And they all left with one of these sheets filled out with them. That was cool and fun, and a lot of people took us up on it to help navigate. And on the bottom half of that sheet is, okay, now you've got your bottom line, how do you pay for it? And there's a payment worksheet that we help you work through. All of this is free. We do one-on-one sessions. You can always reach out to me, but you do need to do the math to figure out what your bottom line is. All of that is assuming everything works fine, the process is going through, but we've been living in a pandemic for near about 2 years. And if the FAFSA, so if you're doing your FAFSA in October, if it no longer reflects your family's circumstances, so think about this, you're doing it in October, it's looking at 2020 taxes. Now, the benefit of that might be that if you lost a job or had a reduction in 2020, that's probably going to serve you well in that it means you might get more financial aid. So if you make more money in 2021, 2022 when you're doing it, don't ask for an appeal. But if something has changed from 2019 or 2021 when you're, or sorry, 2020, you need to follow up with the financial aid office. So let's say you do your FAFSA in October and it's looking at the 2020 taxes, but between filing taxes and when you did the FAFSA, your parents got divorced, okay? They have to use the 2020 taxes, but then you have to follow up with the financial aid office to split everything out, right? Or somebody has major out-of-pocket medical expenses, which I think is going to be a thing that is going to be huge for so many families that were impacted by the pandemic, right? If you as the parent are attending college and you're paying out of pocket for your own tuition, or if you're paying private school tuition for a younger child, if what is on the FAFSA is no longer accurate, you need to report that to the financial aid office, okay? But only if it's a reduction. So if you won the lottery or you got a raise, don't report that. That'll get picked up in the next cycle. But anything that's changed the process towards the negative, impacting your ability to pay, report it to the financial aid office. Financial aid counselors have something called professional judgment leeway, where they can recalculate financial aid in certain circumstances, okay? Give it a minute for questions. They're being inundated right now with appeals. Our senior classes, their FAFSA looked at 2019 income, and then 2020 happened, and now it's 2021, and stuff's all over the place, okay? Here's the sort of piecemeal approach that families use, because unless you're at one of those colleges that meets 100% of need, there is going to be some kind of out-of-pocket responsibility, okay? Most families get the college bill and they don't just write a check for $8,000 or whatever it is, right? It's going to be a little from this and a little from that, right? So you're going to get the bill in usually like July. That tends to be when they come out. And most of them will have some kind of like, tell us how you're going to pay, because the financial aid won't have dispersed yet. You're still putting the pieces together. But they want to know, they want that plan in place by the time you walk in the college door. There's a couple of different ways you can do it. There's no wrong way to do it. They just want the bill to be paid. So it might be pulling some from savings. So let's say you worked all summer as a lifeguard and you've got $3,000 in the bank. Bam, you can use that, okay? Most colleges have a monthly payment plan where you can finance some or all of the balance into interest-free monthly payments directly to the college. There are other private loans, right? So that I could do a whole presentation just on that. I will say I can't recommend one lender over another because that's very specific to income and creditworthiness and all of that. What I can do is recommend the loanforme.com, which is a website that Fame created that allows you to side-by-side compare Maine-based banks and lenders on their private education options. So like Fame's loan is on there. We have the Maine loan. It's UCU, it's Camden National. It's banks and lenders that are in Maine that are real, that you can call or go see a person, that you don't necessarily have to be attending a Maine school to borrow there. It's based on your Maine residency. And built into that website is education about private loans. So what are you getting into? What are the questions to ask? What might they be looking for? And certainly if we're meeting one-on-one or we're going over options, I'm happy to sort of navigate you through that process. But a lot of times what will happen is this. Let's say the bill is $8,000. So, Grammy Sue gave you $2,000. Okay, so you put that right up, you make a payment for that. Then we're at $6,000. Okay, so you might say we can finance $3,000 in a payment plan with the college. Okay, So we've got that part covered. We're left with 3,000. We might borrow that, right? Whatever combination of these things to pay the bill is okay, as long as it gets paid. As long as you have a sustainable plan, okay? Because I want you to think about whatever plan you make to pay for the first year, can you sustain that for subsequent years? Okay, so especially when you get into things like borrowing and all of that, you really want to make sure that you can sustain a plan for each year. And theoretically, things will even out. So if the student moves off campus, that's actually less expensive than room and board on campus, if you can believe that. There's still lots of scholarships, and sometimes they get higher for upperclassmen, but do plan ahead when you're thinking about how you're going to manage paying your bill. Okay. We have a whole bunch of resources available to you. Your school counseling office does. In that pay booklet is a checklist for senior year that breaks it down by season and sometimes by month. So here's all the things you need to do. I live and die by a checklist. I'm a person who writes something I already did just so I can check it off. If you are a checklist person, that will help you be organized, tell you what to do and when. Okay. In addition to that, we have a whole bunch of other things on our website. We have a whole book dedicated to money management. So if you want to figure out getting your sort of financial house in order, some strategies for saving and maximizing that, you can check out our Manage booklet. When you're ready to transition to college, we have our transition to college checklist. So here's all the things over the summer that you need to do to make sure you're ready in the fall. Our website is obviously available 24/7. Tons of great information out there. And I cannot stress enough, connecting with your school counseling office. They do a fantastic job. Some schools do better than others, and your school is one of the best. And the financial aid office. And it doesn't have to be a financial aid office at any particular school. So as you're building your list, right, you've done your FAFSA, maybe you applied to 10 colleges, and you've got a question, call one of the financial aid offices. They're not going to necessarily care whether or not you're going there, but they're a direct line on the information. We can certainly help with many things, and most of us at FAME were former financial aid people, but you can always call a financial aid office. You can also always call an admissions counselor. Of course, they would love it if you were contacting them as a student of their institution, but don't feel limited by that. So it might be that you filed out your FAFSA and you only put 2 colleges on there, and you have a question, call one of them, even if you end up going to a different school later that you put on, right? Yeah.
So I just want to add to Maria's point there. It's one of those myth buster kind of facts. People are always afraid to contact the admissions office before they've gotten accepted, or the financial aid office, because they feel that somehow they're going to be red flagged, and then that's going to, make the decision of them getting in and getting out. It's further from the truth. The applications, the admissions officers want to hear from you. It's a way to create demonstrated interest, which is a metric by which some schools judge your interest in them and therefore their interest in you. And the financial aid office is a resource, especially after you've enrolled. Please call them all the time. Call them every day. They are there specifically to help you and advise you around that particular university's financial aid package that they have given you, and they can speak to it with expertise. If you're planning to appeal, call the financial aid office. Use these folks as a resource. Don't be fearful of reaching out to them.
Excellent, thank you. And I will say, as a former financial aid person, they would much rather you contact them with a question ahead of time than have to help you untangle a particular problem if you did something wrong, or you missed a notification of some kind. Okay, so make sure you find on your campus where your financial aid office is, where your billing office is. Usually they're one and the same. A lot of them are kind of smashing together to become like student financial services or student accounts. So make friends with all of those people. I was very young when I started, and I hung a Breakfast Club poster in my office because I wanted students to think I was cool and come talk to me. But most financial aid folks are super nice. You can also call us. So business hours, 8 to 4:30. We have an amazing staff that will answer your question. And if they can't, which I would be shocked by because they are super knowledgeable on college savings, on FAFSA, on anything, they will route you directly to me. So you can call or email anytime with a question, and we would be happy to assist you. Our website, famemain.com/education, has tons of free resources. If you go to our contact page, let me show you that. you can schedule a one-on-one appointment. So if you want to have some personalized attention about the financial aid process, whether that's now or as you're getting closer, if you go to the FAMing contact page and click on schedule a session, you can get a one-on-one. It'll either be myself or one of my doppelgangers that serve other parts of the state. We rotate hours. You can choose, we're going to have them throughout the summer as well. So you can get a virtual free one-on-one appointment with us to navigate you through any part of this process. We're happy to help you do that. And let me show you a few things on the website as we're wrapping up, because we did get a question. The checklist for going to college. So in our calculators and tools, so if you're in under our quick links, there's a bunch of things I want to show you there. Steps to appeal. So if you're someone with a senior right now who's got a financial aid offer, we navigate you through how to appeal that. This is that FSA ID tracking sheet I was talking about, where you and your parent can write down the information and file this away someplace safe. We've even got some tips for how to do that. The checklist says for 2021-22, it's not going to change. This one has the flow chart for who is my parent. This is the Are You My Mommy chart. Okay, so trying to figure out which parent goes on the FAFSA. And your checklist, the transition to college, is just under that. Okay, so for George. And this is, something to look at ahead of time, right? Okay, I got to think a summer ahead. What are all the things I need to be doing? This includes everything from, make sure you get your finalized transcripts and your AP scores to the colleges. Make sure you do your portals and those kinds of things. So we've tried to make as much information as possible available to you. Here's our YouTube channel. We are working on categorizing our landing page too, Mr. Mark, so don't let those kids get after you. But we have a lot of playlists. So we have specific, these are the frequently asked questions about the FAFSA. We have a whole section for new Mainers. This is about decision making. So we have a whole, I don't want to play it right now. I want the list. We have a whole list of like, how do I make the decision? How do I keep college affordable? A presentation similar to this one, that financial aid and college financing. Then we have a whole, I have to find it. There's one about the FAFSA. I don't know why it's all the way at the end. Filing the FAFSA, here we go. So there are, I think 10 videos in here. Take you through the whole process, okay? So these are all animated, they're all short. We have videos on pretty much everything for the process that you can access at any point. Okay, I'm gonna put my email address directly in the chat. Feel free anytime to email me. Also, Mr. Marks knows how to get a hold of me. And take advantage of our free coaching offer. If you want a one-on-one appointment, we're happy to assist, because I know this can feel really overwhelming. But by being here tonight, you're doing the right thing and listening to the information and absorbing what you can, and knowing where to go for information. So thank you all for joining me. I will hang out a little bit if folks have questions or you want to private message me something one-on-one. Otherwise, thank you and have a great night.
Thanks, everyone. Remember that we'll be recording this. I have recorded this and I will get it into a YouTube video tomorrow morning, and it'll be up on our website on the counseling page through the financial aid tab. Again, if you have questions, review the video, get into the FAME resources, their YouTube channel, call your counselor, call the counseling office. We are here, and you guys as juniors are fully on the clock in terms of our attention. Seniors have already forgotten about us. They've moved on, unfortunately, and we're excited for them. So it's your turn now, juniors, and we're here for you in any capacity. Red folder night, please, 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 juniors, pay attention to the Schoology announcement about red folder and your meeting with your counselors prior to the start of school day, okay? And it's all listed out for you, the day and the homerooms and when they'll meet and where. And then parents, your June 1st, again, those links are already on our website. I will send out a Zoom notification again with the link for red folder as well. We will do a follow-up red folder in the fall, the first week we get back to school. What our hope is that you students, and I'm speaking to you students because as Maria alluded, this is your process, that you use the summer effectively. and that you use it as an opportunity to get ahead of the game in terms of your applications, because this fall, I hate to break it to you, but it happens to every senior. It is a stressful time. You are still trying to, kick butt in school. You're applying to colleges. You're filing your FAFSA. You're doing all these things all at once while also still trying to maintain a life. So please, 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 please use the summer effectively. Tackle that essay. Get on top of your Common App, all that kind of stuff, and we'll definitely touch upon that red folder and also the refresher of the red folder in the first week of September. If anyone has questions, like to ask them, please just stay on. If not, have a great evening, folks. Thanks for joining us.
You can unmute, or some people are messaging me in the chat, so that's fine as well. I'll hang out for a little bit until all the people disappear. It's always like suddenly they're just, oh God. Just make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay. Nobody brave enough to keep their camera on the whole time. How big was your graduating class this year?
I believe our senior class is 170, 172, somewhere around there. Our junior class is 167 right now. Sophomores and freshmen are pretty big as well. And then the incoming class is going to be a little smaller, about 160, 150. And then the 8th grade class is going to be, it may even get close to 200. We're looking at
really
gigantic, what is going to be 8th grade next year, the following, so the class of 2026.
Wow.
Looking to a gigantic class. So inclusive of, I was saying, I have twins of my girls.
Right, yeah.
My girls will be a part of the 2026 group. So
twin girls, oof, you're busy.
They keep me on my toes. Let's put it that way.
I'm sure, especially in middle school, no less.
Yeah.
Mine's a 7th grade boy, and that feels like enough. Feels like enough.
So we've got some folks hanging out here. You guys have questions, or we, if you want, you can unmute and ask, or we may just be slowly trickling out. I think that's the case. Maria, great job as always.
Thank you. Happy to help.
Yeah, you're so strong, engaging, and I really appreciate your perspective. It's thorough and well done. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And like I said, hopefully in the fall things will be in person or in some semblance of.
So yeah, keep that on in your mind. We will be going back. I don't know if you remember our regional college night that we did. So that will come back, and usually that's the first week of February.
Yeah.
So you'll have regional college, you'll have scholarship night with us. Hopefully you'll still help us out with that, and then we'll have financial aid night. But that regional college piece is nice because you guys will have you'll have your breakout room. You can do, if you want to do multiple rooms, we'll be more than willing to help you out there too.
Okay. Yeah. Well, definitely. I think we're, FAME's pretty much operating right now. We're sort of at half capacity in the office anyway, but I think as I'll be fully vaccinated as of Saturday. But I think especially come next spring, I think we'll be in a good position to be sort of back to normal. So yeah, keep me posted on dates and things, and we're happy to help. And then feel free to refer people to me as needed.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Maria. You're awesome.
Enjoy your evening. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.